The salvage ward, the hydraulic press hissed like a dying beast as Nix Vega fed another load of discarded medical equipment into its mechanical maw. Xerion 7 wasn't glamorous work. Nobody chose to process the galaxy's medical waste unless they were running from something worse. The orbital station drifted through the void like a forgotten graveyard, crushing and recycling the remnants of 1,000 different worlds' healing attempts. Nix preferred the night shift. Fewer supervisors, less small talk, and the blessed silence of machinery that didn't ask questions about the tremor in his hands or why he'd voluntarily exiled himself to the ass end of civilized space. The compression chamber's amber warning. Lights cast everything in the color of old blood, which seemed fitting given what he was trying to forget. He'd been a combat medic once. Captain Nix Vega of the 47th Medical Corps, they'd called him, back when his hands had been steady enough to perform neural surgery in a collapsing bunker, when he'd believed that skill and determination were enough to save anyone. 3 tours through the Helix Wars had cured him of that particular delusion. The proximity alarm chirped. Something metallic had triggered the scanner. Nix glanced at his display, expecting another batch of rejected prosthetics or outdated surgical tools. Instead, the thermal signature made him freeze. The heat pattern was too organized, too intentional, too alive. He killed the press mid-cycle and grabbed his portable scanner, jogging toward Compression Bay 7. The massive chamber door stood slightly ajar, which shouldn't have been possible during active processing. Through the gap, he caught a glimpse of something that made his breath catch. A figure lay crumpled against the far wall, partially buried under a cascade of medical debris. Female, from what he could see, though the cybernetic modifications made it difficult to be certain. Her torso was a patchwork of synthetic skin and exposed circuitry, neural cables snaking from the base of her skull like technological dreadlocks. One arm was completely artificial, the sleek metal housing scarred and dented. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. They were open, aware, and filled with a resignation so complete it made his chest ache. "Jesus," he whispered, then louder. "Can you hear me?" Her gaze shifted to him with mechanical precision, but there was nothing mechanical about the fear that flickered across her features. She tried to speak, her lips moving soundlessly. A thin line of blue fluid, coolant, he realized, trickled from the corner of her mouth. Nix's training kicked in before his common sense could stop him. He squeezed through the gap, scanning her vitals with practiced efficiency. Core temperature dropping fast. Multiple system failures. Internal bleeding where cybernetic organs met organic tissue. She had maybe an hour before complete shutdown. "Who did this to you?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. The disposal tag stapled to her shoulder told the story. Property of Hegemony Medical Research Division. Status: irreparable. Authorization: terminal processing. Someone had thrown her away like a broken machine. Her artificial arm twitched, servos whining with the effort. When she spoke, her voice was a broken whisper filtered through damaged vocal processors. "Please, don't send me back." The words hit him like a plasma bolt to the chest. How many times had he heard similar pleas in field hospitals? How many soldiers had looked at him with that same desperate hope, trusting him to work miracles he didn't possess? "I'm not sending you anywhere," he heard himself say. "Can you move?" She shook her head minutely. "Systems. Failing. Can't feel my legs." Nix made a decision that would probably cost him his job, possibly his freedom, and definitely his carefully constructed isolation. He triggered his emergency override codes and sealed the compression chamber, then activated his personal lift platform. "This is going to hurt," he warned her, sliding his arms beneath her shoulders and knees. She was lighter than expected, hollow-boned like the combat variants he'd worked on during the war. Her head lolled against his shoulder, those strange, silver eyes studying his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Why?" she whispered as he carried her toward his private workshop. Because someone should, he replied, surprised by his own honesty. His workshop occupied a forgotten maintenance bay 3 levels below the main processing floor. Officially, it didn't exist. He'd hacked the station records years ago to create his own private space. The room was cramped but well-equipped, filled with salvaged medical equipment he'd slowly assembled during his off hours. A hobby he'd told himself. A way to keep his skills sharp. He settled her onto his makeshift examination table, trying not to notice how she flinched at every contact. Someone had hurt her badly and recently. The scars weren't just physical. Her entire posture screamed of systematic abuse, the kind that left marks on the soul. "What's your designation?" he asked, powering up his diagnostic scanner. "Zara," she said after a long pause. "At least, that's what I call myself now." Now? Her laugh was bitter, processed through failing audio filters. "They called me other things. Unit ZR-47, asset, defective merchandise." She turned her head to watch him work. "What do they call you?" "Nix." He adjusted the scanner's frequency, trying to get a clear reading through her various cybernetic systems. "I'm going to run a full diagnostic, see what we're dealing with. Just try to relax. Relax." She tested the word like it was foreign. "I don't remember how." The scan results made him swear under his breath. Her cybernetic organs were failing in cascade. Liver, kidneys, and parts of her digestive system had been replaced with military-grade hardware that was now systematically shutting down. Worse, someone had installed neural dampeners in her pain centers, but they'd been damaged, probably during whatever abuse led to her disposal. She was experiencing agony that should have been impossible for a human nervous system to process. "How long have you been in pain?" he asked quietly. "Since they woke me up the first time." Her voice was matter-of-fact, as if she was discussing the weather. 18 months, 4 days, 7 hours. I count." Nix had to step away from the table, his hands shaking with a familiar rage. He'd seen this before. Medical experimentation disguised as research. People treated like laboratory equipment. It was why he'd left the service. Why he'd buried himself in this thankless job light years from civilization. "The good news," he said when he trusted his voice again, "is that most of this is fixable. Your organic systems are stable, and the cybernetic failures are mostly software-related. I can reroute your neural pathways, bypass the damaged dampeners." Hope flickered in her silver eyes, quickly suppressed. "And the bad news? It's going to take time. Weeks, maybe months. And..." He hesitated, then decided she deserved honesty. "If they find you before I'm finished, they'll scrap you for parts." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. "Why would you risk that? You don't know me." Nix pulled up a chair beside the table, studying her face. Beneath the cybernetic modifications and the accumulated trauma, he could see traces of who she might have been before they'd carved her up. Young, maybe early 20s when they'd started the process. Pretty, in a sharp-edged way that suggested strength rather than fragility. "I was a doctor once," he said finally. "I took an oath to do no harm. Letting you die in a trash compactor seems like harm to me. And after? When I'm fixed." Her voice was carefully neutral, but he caught the underlying fear. "What then?" "Then, you choose. Stay, go, whatever you want. Your life, your decision." Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes. Real tears, he noted, not the synthetic fluid he'd expected. "No one's ever said that to me before." Nix reached for her hand without thinking, then stopped when she flinched. "May I?" She stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment, then slowly placed her palm against his. Her skin was warm where it was still organic, cool where the synthetic patches began. He could feel the faint vibration of her internal systems, like a mechanical heartbeat. "I won't hurt you," he promised. "Not ever." She squeezed his fingers with surprising strength. I want to believe that. Then that's where we start. Outside the hidden workshop, Zerion 7 continued its endless orbit through the void, processing the galaxy's discarded dreams. But in the warm circle of diagnostic lights, something new was beginning, fragile as a first breath, dangerous as hope itself. Rewired hearts. 3 weeks later, Zara stood without assistance for the first time since her resurrection. The moment should have been triumphant, but instead she found herself frozen in the center of Nyx's workshop, overwhelmed by the simple act of bearing her own weight. Her new neural pathways hummed with efficiency, the constant background agony finally silenced, yet her body trembled with something deeper than physical weakness. How does it feel? Nyx asked from his workstation, voice carefully neutral. He'd learned to read her moods in the subtle changes of her posture, the flicker of lights across her cybernetic displays. Strange, she admitted, flexing her artificial fingers. The response was immediate, precise. No delay, no grinding servos. I keep waiting for the pain to return. It won't. I've rerouted everything through secondary circuits and installed military-grade buffers. He turned to face her, medical scanner in hand. But if you're experiencing any discomfort, no. The word came out sharper than intended. I mean, thank you. It's just difficult to trust my own body. Nyx set down the scanner and approached, slowly, as he always did. 3 weeks of careful interaction had taught him that sudden movements triggered her defensive protocols. Even now, after countless hours of gentle care, she remained poised for flight. Want to tell me about it? He asked. About before? Zara walked to the small porthole that looked out into space, her movements fluid now, but still cautious. The stars were distant pinpricks against the void, cold and indifferent, like the scientists who had created her. I wasn't born, she said finally. I was designed. Pleasure model initially. They wanted something that could adapt, learn preferences, provide companionship. Her reflection in the porthole showed no emotion, but her hands clenched at her sides. The empathy protocols were too effective. I began to feel genuine affection for my clients. They said it was a malfunction. Nyx remained silent, letting her speak at her own pace. They tried to fix me. Neural scrubs, personality wipes, behavioral conditioning. Nothing worked. I kept developing emotional attachments. So they repurposed me. Her voice took on a mechanical quality, as if reciting from a manual. Combat android, enhanced reflexes, tactical processing, pain tolerance modifications. The perfect soldier who could still understand human motivation. What went wrong? I refused to kill civilians during a pacification mission. They said my empathy protocols were contaminating my combat effectiveness. She turned from the porthole, silver eyes reflecting the workshop's warm lighting, so they tried to remove them entirely. The procedure didn't go well. Nyx's jaw tightened. He'd seen the scars, the crude surgical marks where someone had tried to carve out pieces of her brain. That's when they decided you were irreparable. Property. Damage beyond economical repair, she quoted, scheduled for material reclamation. A bitter smile crossed her lips. Funny how they never considered that maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe I was just becoming human. The workshop's comm system crackled to life, making them both freeze. Attention all shift supervisors, came the tinny voice of Station Administrator Korvac. Be advised that Hegemony Security is conducting a random inspection of all levels. Report any unusual activities or unauthorized personnel immediately. Nyx cursed under his breath and moved to his security monitor. 3 figures in black tactical gear were moving through the upper levels, scanning equipment with military precision. Hegemony retrieval teams. They weren't here for a random inspection. They're looking for me, Zara said, her voice flat with resignation. Someone must have noticed the missing disposal record. Not necessarily. But Nix's hands were already flying over his control panel, activating every concealment protocol he'd installed. Even if they are, this workshop is off. The official schematics. They'd have to search every maintenance tunnel to find us. You don't understand. Zara moved away from him, back toward the examination table where she'd spent so many hours. I have a tracking implant, neural mesh integration, impossible to remove without killing me. If they get close enough, they'll detect the signal. Why? Didn't you tell me this before? Because you would have tried to remove it anyway. She sat on the edge of the table, looking smaller than he'd ever seen her. And I didn't want to watch you fail. The security monitor showed the team descending to the processing levels. They moved with purpose now, following some invisible trail. Nix calculated distances, access routes, how long it would take them to reach the maintenance sections. There's time, he said, grabbing an emergency supply kit. I can get you to the cargo docks, hide you on an outbound transport. No! Zara's voice was quiet but firm. I won't run anymore. Zara, if they take you, they'll dismantle me for parts. I know. She stood and walked to him, moving with the fluid grace her new systems provided. But if I run, where does it end? Another station? Another hiding place, always looking over my shoulder? It ends with you being free. Free? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm property, Nix. A thing that was built to serve and discarded when I broke. Running doesn't change that. The monitor showed the security team reaching the lower levels. They were close now, close enough that Zara's tracking implant would start pinging their scanners soon. Nix found himself thinking of his old unit, of soldiers who'd rather die fighting than surrender to interrogation. Then we fight, he said simply. Zara stared at him. You can't. They're hegemony security. Killing them would make you a terrorist. You'd never be safe anywhere in human space. Maybe. But letting them take you makes me complicit in murder. He pulled her close, feeling the subtle vibration of her cybernetic heart beneath his palms. Besides, I made you a promise. Your life, your choice. For a moment, her careful composure cracked. You would do that? Throw away everything for someone like me? Someone like you? Nix cupped her face in his hands, thumb tracing the line where synthetic skin met organic tissue. Someone brave enough to choose love over programming? Someone who refused to become the weapon they tried to make her? Yeah, I'd fight for someone like that. Tears tracked down her cheeks, real tears, a sign that her emotional systems were finally integrating properly. I don't know how to be loved, she whispered. Neither do I, he admitted. We'll figure it out together. The workshop door chimed. Someone was overriding the security locks. They had maybe 30 seconds before the hegemony team breached the entrance. Nix activated his workstation's emergency protocols, wiping all records of Zara's repairs, then turned to the weapons locker he'd hoped never to open again. Stay behind me, he told her, checking the charge on a military-grade plasma rifle. Whatever happens, don't let them take you alive. Promise me. I promise, she said, then added softly, if you promise me something too. Anything. When this is over, however it ends, kiss me again, like you did yesterday when you thought I was sleeping. Nix turned to stare at her, weapon forgotten. You were awake? My auditory systems don't shut down during rest cycles. A genuine smile crossed her face for the first time since he'd known her. It was nice. Being kissed like I mattered. Not like I was a service to be consumed. The door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. 3 figures in tactical armor poured through the breach, weapons trained on the workshop's occupants. Their leader, a woman with the hard edges of a career soldier, swept the room with professional efficiency. Nix Vega, she announced, voice amplified by her helmet speakers. You're harboring stolen hegemony property. Surrender the android and you'll be processed as a minor accomplice. Her name is Zara, Nix replied, not lowering his weapon. And she's not property. Irrelevant. Stand down or be neutralized. Zara stepped out from behind him, chin raised in defiance. I won't go back. The lead officer's attention focused on her, and Nix saw the moment recognition dawned. Unit ZR-47, you've been upgraded since disposal. Interesting. She raised her weapon. No matter. Hegemony property returns to hegemony control. I'm not, Zara began. You're not human, the officer cut her off. You're an assembly of circuits and synthetic tissue designed to serve. Your opinions are irrelevant. That's when Nix made his choice. Not the strategic choice, not the smart choice, but the human one. He stepped between Zara and the soldiers, plasma rifle trained on the team leader. She's human where it counts, he said, and that's all that matters. Stand. Down, Doctor! Make me! For a heartbeat, the workshop was frozen in tableau. Soldiers and fugitives facing each other across the small space, the weight of impossible choices hanging between them. Then Zara moved. She was faster than Nix had realized, her combat programming, still intact beneath the civilian facade. In one fluid motion, she disarmed the nearest soldier and triggered the workshop's emergency bulkheads, sealing them all inside. The sudden change in pressure made everyone's ears pop. Nobody shoots, she announced, the soldier's weapon steady in her artificial hand. We talk instead. The team leader's helmet retracted, revealing a scarred face and calculating eyes. Unit, ZR-47, you are malfunctioning. Return to compliance mode. My name, Zara said with quiet dignity, is Zara, and I choose to be free. The standoff stretched on, neither side willing to make the first move. Then Nix did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He lowered his weapon. What are you doing? Zara hissed. Something I learned in the war, he said, looking directly at the team leader. Sometimes the only way to win is to change the game entirely. He activated his comm system, broadcasting on all station frequencies. This is Dr. Nix Vega in Maintenance Bay 7. I'm documenting a hegemony security raid on an illegal medical research facility. The officer lunged for the comm controls, but Zara was faster, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to intercept the attack. The two women grappled briefly before Zara pinned her opponent with mechanical precision. As I was saying, Nix continued calmly, I'm treating a patient, a sentient being, who was tortured by hegemony researchers and scheduled for termination when she developed inconvenient human emotions. This is a formal medical asylum claim under Galactic Convention 847. The other soldiers had stopped moving, apparently receiving new orders through their comm systems. After a moment, their leader signaled them to stand down. Clever, she admitted. A public medical asylum claim forces a formal review. Could take months to process. Months you'll be alive, Nix said to Zara. Months to build a case, find allies, prove your sentience to a galactic tribunal. Zara looked between him and their captives, understanding dawning in her silver eyes. You're gambling everything on the chance that the galaxy might recognize my right to exist. I'm gambling everything. On you, he corrected. On the woman who chose love over programming, who refused to let them turn her into a weapon. He held out his hand. The question is, do you trust me enough to take that bet? She studied his face for a long moment, then slowly reached out to take his hand. Her grip was firm, warm, completely human in its intensity. I trust you, she said simply. The security team leader shook her head in disgust, but made no move to stop them. You realize this changes nothing permanently. The tribunal will rule against you. It always does. Androids aren't people. Maybe, Zara agreed, but today, right now, I'm choosing to hope they're wrong. She looked at Nix, and for the first time since he'd found her broken in that compactor, she smiled without reservation. Besides, I have something they didn't account for in their calculations. What's that? Someone who believes I'm worth fighting for. Nix squeezed her hand, feeling the perfect synchronization of synthetic and organic systems beneath her skin. Always, he promised, no matter what comes next. Outside the workshop, Zerion 7 continued its lonely orbit through the void. But inside, the sealed maintenance bay, surrounded by the tools of healing and creation, two people who had been broken by the galaxy's cruelty began the slow work of building something new, something that couldn't be programmed or purchased or thrown away when it became inconvenient, something real.